In the early morning of October 7th, the Palestinian armed organization, Hamas, broke through the fences and posts set up by Israel in the Gaza Strip in a three-dimensional attack. Attacks have been carried out on border villages, cities and even military bases close to Gaza. Israel showed a certain degree of preparedness in the early stage, but then dispatched ground armed forces and air force to retaliate against Gaza. However, this conflict is no longer a unilateral massacre by Israel, but has evolved into a situation where both sides are attacking and defending each other. The rising number of casualties has seriously questioned Israel's world-renowned military strength. Even the Speaker of the Knesset and a former military spokesman admitted that this was Israel's Pearl Harbor moment. Welcome to World Hotspot, where you will be able to learn about projects, cooperation around the world and important information about China. I hope you can subscribe to me. Let us discover more interesting things around the world together. Israel, which suffered a surprise attack, is trying to find the main force of Hamas and dropping bombs on Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip. At the same time, they are looking for support around the world, including China. According to news released by Reuters and Agence France-Presse on the 8th of this month, senior Israeli officials in China expressed in an interview that they hoped that China would strongly condemn Hamas on the grounds that China is a friend of Israel. Regarding the ceasefire and peace talks initiative put forward by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Israeli officials said that now is not the time to call for a negotiated solution. However, China's position on the Palestinian-Israeli issue is very clear and consistent, that is, it supports the two-state solution and uses the 1967 border line as the basis for demarcation, while strengthening Palestinian autonomy. Unfortunately, Israel still refuses to accept even this proposal, which is still unfair to Palestine, and insists that Palestine must first recognize Israel before relations between the two countries can be normalized. As for Israel's Likud group, it is clamoring to make Palestinians in the West Bank disappear. This means that whether the two sides are at war or not is not enough to affect negotiations and solutions between the two sides, because Israel will not accept any solution other than its own from the beginning. It is true that the relationship between China and Israel can be considered friendly, but this does not mean that China will fully accept all Israel's propositions and positions on the Palestinian-Israeli issue. This has been fully reflected in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. On the contrary, Israel must answer the questions of the Chinese people. Why has Israel, which claims to have been attacked by terrorism, implemented a near-concentration camp-style blockade against Palestinian civilians in the Gaza Strip for decades? Why does Israel, which opposes aggression, use force to occupy the Golan Heights that originally belonged to Syria since 1967 and build Israeli settlements in the Golan Heights in 2020 without Syria's consent? In addition, Israel claims that it suffered a Pearl Harbor-style sneak attack, which may be a bit too beautifying its own image. The Palestinian National Liberation Organization, Fatah, used powered paragliders to conduct a raid on Israel in 1987, known as Operation Blackbird. It was almost identical to Hamas's raid this time, but the implementation method was more diverse. Perhaps Israel should reread the history books and re-examine this period of history, because it was the success of Operation Blackbird that, to a certain extent, inspired the confidence of the first Palestinian uprising. For a modern country, it is undoubtedly a fatal flaw to only remember food and not fight. Tel Aviv must realize that Israel can fully use its influence in the Western world to influence the Palestinian-Israeli reconciliation process. However, these methods cannot change the current situation that the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip are suffering systematic oppression, let alone the fact that Israel itself is creating more Hamas organizations.